Grassland Dry Firefighting. A few years ago, Don Alexander, Fire Warden and Rural Fire Brigade officer from the Ibis Creek Primary Producer Brigade and of Willoughby Aramac Station near Longreach, highlighted the importance of the need for volunteer firefighters to understand the uses and safety considerations in fighting wildgrass fires with dry firefighting equipment. Teams of volunteers joined in to show techniques in a dry firefighting exercise done in the ways of Western Queensland. With the emergence of consistent training across rural fire brigades, it was decided to use footage from the original exercise and out of fire season to capture additional footage to better highlight best practice principles. Firefighting equipment and techniques are often geographically specific, based on the landscape, fuel loads, risks and the equipment available.
In this presentation I wish to share with you 3 pieces of equipment we use in Western Queensland for firefighting. There's the grader, then the Brompton rat, and lastly but importantly the fire beater.
The grader.
Graders are commonly used throughout Queensland to maintain properties and control fires. And here's some information we'd like to share with you.
The grader is a common piece of machinery used throughout Queensland to assist in controlling fire. A similar approach is undertaken for controlling fire with a grader as with a Brompton rat. The grader is used to create a fire break to contain the fire within an area, whilst at the same time a backburn is conducted from the edge of the break using a tailing support vehicle with firefighting capability. Whether the machinery is a grader or a Brompton rat, there are a few pieces of safety equipment that are required in preparation before you respond to the fire. 1. All vehicles operating on the fire ground need to be equipped with a burn-over blanket and first aid kit, and crews trained to use them. 2. Compatible radio communications are required for essential and effective operations and crew safety. CB are commonly used in Western Queensland. 3. Ensure the vehicle carries sufficient drinking water and a fire extinguisher in case of emergencies. 4. Fencing pliers may also be useful when operating on properties. 5. Full protective clothing for grader operators would consist of that similar to rural firefighters. When using a grader on the fire ground, there are a number of extra features that are beneficial for fire management. The grader requires good lighting for night operations. A combination of broad beams and spotlights are used to illuminate a distance well ahead of the grader. In addition to these, illuminate the back of the moldboard or grader blade to see how well the cut is being conducted. Further vision behind the vehicle is also important. A rotating orange beacon situated on the top of the operator's cab is mandatory. In some older model graders, the air cleaner may need to be upgraded to a cyclonic action type of air cleaner to prevent embers being caught in the air cleaner housing. This type of air cleaner works in a centrifugal manner, spinning any particles sucked into the intake out to the edges of the housing where they fall out of the air cleaner body. Inefficient pre-cleaning may allow an ember to pass into the main air filter where the embers will burn the paper filter. During the 2003 Canberra fires, some fire appliances were destroyed due to inappropriate air filter assemblies, allowing entry of embers. Fully enclosed or glazed cabins are preferred, as they allow for better protection of the operator. Across Queensland, the grader is used to either contain the fire or in some cases suppress the fire. Let's first of all look at the use of graders to contain a fire. The use of a grader enables a fire break to be constructed in a fairly rapid manner. The operator can angle the blade so that the reel is moved away from the fire or towards the unburnt side of the control line. The blade is set to a depth to reduce likelihood of the blade leaving patches of fuel through bouncing during the movement of the grader. This could result in a depth of approximately 150 mm when working on rough ground. Provided there's not too much rock in the area, the fire control line can be created quite rapidly. By monitoring the fire behaviour and the rate of spread, the operator aims to travel at a safe distance parallel with the fire edge, so that the junction zone of the backburn from the trailing support crews and the main fire are well away from the graded containment line. Accompanying the grader, a fire appliance or other vehicle and lighting crew will conduct backburning along the inside edge of the control line. In most situations, this vehicle needs to follow between 50 to 100 metres behind the grader. This distance allows for the machinery to suddenly stop and reverse quickly if needed. thereby avoiding any collision with the support vehicle. Sufficient drip torch fuel on the support vehicle is required to necessitate effective backburning operations for the duration of the grader operation. Let's now look at how the grader can be used to suppress the fire. In some cases, on open grass paddocks where low intensity flame heights are less than half a metre, it is possible to extinguish the fire using the grader in a direct attack method. The operator can position the grader to straddle the edge of the fire line, necessitating putting one side on burnt ground and the other on unburnt ground. The operator needs to continuously monitor the conditions of the tyres in the machine to ensure that they aren't subjected to damage from the heat or flames. Unlike when adjusting the blade to container fire, the blade should be angled so that the reel is formed on burnt ground. In doing so, if any embers or smouldering materials are picked up, they are turned back into the burnt area and are unable to start further fires on the outside of the containment line. Ideally, always start your attack at a safe anchor point or the heel of the fire, and then work towards the head along the flanks. Always ensure a support vehicle with firefighting capacity is following to provide backburning where necessary and crew protection. Make sure that there is a person fulfilling the role of a lookout, watching fire behaviour and weather observations. The same approach is undertaken for controlling fire with a grader as that with a Brompton rat. After firefighting operations are completed and the fire is deemed to be out, the grader is required to restore the fire control line. This involves the grader shifting the reel back into the cut so that the area is returned to its original profile. If this is not completed, erosion is likely. Advantages of using a grader. Using a combination of grader and support vehicle or vehicles make it possible to get a rate of containment line construction and backburn as much as 20 km per hour where conditions allow. The faster the control line backburn operation can be conducted, the quicker the fire can be contained and ultimately extinguished without compromising safety. It's very effective when water isn't readily available. Limitations. Staking of the drive wheels can be reduced by ensuring that the blade is wider than the track of the grader. The brake needs to be effective and the need to make sure that the reel created is outside the rear wheels. The undercarriage of the grader, including tyres and hydraulic hoses, are most vulnerable from flame impingement when used for suppression. An enclosed cabin contains considerable glass that allows radiant heat to enter the cabin. This may compromise safe operating conditions as the operator cannot lower themselves below the window level. Safety considerations. When using the grader for suppression activities, a lookout in the following support vehicle should be appointed. The preferred method is to begin the attack from a safe anchor point, which could be a track or road or similar, to tie in the control line and provide some security from the fire breaking out if there is a wind change. Emergency procedures. In an emergency where the grader is trapped behind a high intensity fire front, the operator should, first, angle grader and the blade towards the approaching fire front and create a bare earth area. The grader's protection from radiant heat will be behind a barrier. This can be achieved by having a mound of soil in front of the blade for extra protection. The operator needs to retreat from the cabin of the machine with all PPE fitted correctly, the fire extinguisher and the fire protection blanket in hand. Using the blade and earth mound as a heat shield, the operator should lay behind it with their whole body covered by the fire protection blanket. Wait for the fire to pass and then extinguish anything burning on or near the grader. It's a good idea to practice this drill before you need it.
The Brompton rat was developed by Mr. Harry Gray and his son on Brompton Station in the Muddaborough district, and that's where it gets its name from. I found the Brompton rat a very effective piece of equipment to be fighting fires, particularly in the Longreach area.
Historically, fire suppression on large properties was carried out using water that was transported by trucks. Issues arising from this included water sources were few and far between, limited truck accessibility to dams, limited supplies of water in drought times, and many firefighters required to operate equipment. It frequently occurred that suppression was almost complete when water supplies ran out, allowing the fire to build again. There were a limited number of trucks available to suppress the fires, so plant equipment began to be used. This led in part to the development of the Brompton rat. Initially, there were several attempts at developing a plough type of implement. The first of these were just by using grader blades or ordinary farm ploughs. The V-type of plough was preferred because it enabled faster operation. The higher powered tractor proved to be capable of fairly fast operation, with speeds as high as 10 to 12 km per hour, provided the area was relatively smooth with no rocks or tree roots. When working in wildfire conditions, a minimum of a 60 horsepower tractor is required. The higher the horsepower, the faster the rat can work and the greater the margin of safety. It is essential for a Brompton rat to be constructed in such a way as to allow the operator to control the burner whilst in operation. Being able to control which side of the Brompton rat to light and the ability to stop lighting makes for a more effective unit. There is a modified version of a Brompton rat able to be towed behind a regular four-wheel drive vehicle. This is fairly strenuous on a four-wheel drive vehicle. There's no drip torch on this Brompton rat. It has an advantage over other forms as it can travel more rapidly to a fireground than the heavier plant machinery, but it may not be as quick to operate on the fireground. It works best when being drawn in a straight line. The burner mounted on the Brompton rat enables faster operation and reduces the need for more firefighters to accomplish the same task. The ideal number of people fighting a fire with this method consists of a crew of 3. One person would be operating the tractor Brompton rat combination. The second would be following in a support vehicle with firefighting capacity, maintaining a safe distance between it and the rat vehicle. The third person would be a lookout, monitoring for outbreaks and observing fire and weather conditions. The concept of using the Brompton rat with a burner is to travel along the flanks of the fire, starting from the heel as the safe anchor point, lighting as you go. This is typical of a parallel attack. By monitoring the fire behaviour and the rate of spread, the operator aims to travel at a safe distance parallel with the fire edge so that the junction zone of the backburn and the main fire are well away from the ploughed containment line. By doing this, the operator is ensuring that there is a burnt out area to retreat to immediately behind them. Provided the terrain isn't too difficult, it is possible to travel along at 10 km per hour. Make sure that the plough isn't set too deep. The aim is to turn a rill to be approximately 200 mm high. This allows the nozzle from the burner to efficiently light the grass area outside the rill and not drip into the dirt turned up in the rill. The objective is to get a solid line of fire started with the burner to ensure a secure control line. The main impact on the pasture is that the rill remains a feature of the landscape after pasture regeneration. Most species of grasses, particularly the Mitchell grass, has a deeply rooted, starchy root system. Provided the rill was not made too deep by the operator, the grasses will regenerate. If the plough is set too deep, regeneration may need to be assisted by restoring the rill into the cut to prevent gulling and erosion. Advantages. The Brompton rat allows you to create a fire break and conduct backburning operations at the same time with one piece of machinery and one operator. The Brompton rat can work quickly on open flat ground with minimal obstructions. It is ideal for use in managing fast-running grass fires. It is very effective when water isn't readily available and when firefighter numbers are limited. Limitations. This piece of equipment doesn't work well in forested or rocky country, as the plough gets caught in tree roots, large rocks or other debris. It has limited use in sandy areas. The operator needs to be aware that working in hot environments can limit the efficient use of plant equipment, especially if the air intake of the engine is compromised through allowing embers to enter the air filter. Hot air can also be drawn into the air intake of the plant equipment. This means that the engine won't work at peak efficiency. It runs the risk of damaging the engine or it not being able to operate altogether. Grass turned over into the rills generally burns within the rills. On occasions, however, it's possible that this grass could cause a flare-up. Safety considerations. Grass fires can have an extremely fast forward rate of spread, quite capable of outrunning a vehicle over the terrain. The operator must always be aware of possible changes in fire behaviour due to any wind changes. Fires peak in intensity around 1400 hours, usually the time of highest temperatures and lowest humidity. Temperatures can reach above 40 degrees Celsius in the shade. Wind strength can be higher during late morning. It is essential to watch for the individual hazards of the area, such as power lines, dam edges, fences and large tree roots. A mop-up unit or support vehicle is required to follow the Brompton rat to ensure the safety of the operator and equipment should conditions change or in case of the Brompton rat becoming disabled. If at any stage you need to change direction, always raise the burner arm to prevent fire spreading to unwanted areas. The Western Beater.
Type of fire beater was developed in Western Queensland, and I believe it was by the Scottish managers of large pastoral runs in Western Queensland back in the 1860s or so. It was used in Scotland to put out heather fires, and it still is today to my knowledge. I believe this is one of the most useful items of firefighting equipment you could have. It's one of the original ones in Australia in the parcel industry. It only needs the power and the will of the person handling the beater to continue for days or hours on end. It's very handy where you're very short of water and where you run out of water. It's the only way you may have of holding a fire or actually extinguishing it.
The beater is an effective tool on low intensity fires with flame heights less than half a metre. The beater is dropped on flaming grass, smothering it and hence removing the oxygen. If used incorrectly, the beater can fan the fire and cause it to spread. Some traditional beater heads were made of leather, while contemporary ones are made of canvas hose or rubber. The rubber head has been found to be effective in Mitchell Downs country. The wooden handle can be as long as 2 metres to keep the operator at a safe distance from the fire. The beater head is approximately 375mm wide and 600mm. Traditional beaters with a leather head also incorporate pieces of chain to prevent the leather head from flopping up and down on the handle. Most beaters today use a sturdy piece of rubber that prevents the head bending back. Many people use the beater incorrectly, tiring themselves out quickly. A beater should not be raised higher than the waist, and using the weight of the beater alone, allow the beater to flop down on the flames. In some cases, all you may be required to do is use the beater in a flip-flop style of action to smother the fire. The downward motion of the beater should cause any embers or burning debris to be directed towards the burnt ground. Over-enthusiastic application of the beater, beating the fire for example, will result in not extinguishing the fire but most likely spreading it further. Advantages. The beater is an alternative option when water is limited and plant equipment is not available. It allows firefighters to maintain some containment while firefighting vehicles replenish water. The beater is cheap to purchase and has low or no ongoing costs. An appropriate dry firefighting tool for mopping up at grass fires. Limitations. The beater is only suitable on low intensity fire and if used incorrectly can spread the fire. Due to the physical activity that is required, firefighter fatigue may occur sooner than firefighters conducting other activities. Safety considerations. It is essential that all PPE is worn correctly. PPE should include ankle to wrist coverings such as overalls, fire-rated boots, gloves, helmet, goggles and respirator. Undergarments should be made of wool or cotton, not synthetic materials. If firefighters are working away from the vehicle, the officer in charge should be aware of where you are working and if possible have radio communications back to the vehicle. Firefighters should rotate tasks with other firefighters to minimise firefighter fatigue. Adequate drinking water should be available and consumed at the rate of 1 litre per hour in small quantities rather than one large drink. There are other dry firefighting tools that are available to you such as the McLeod tool, rake-hoe, rakes and drip torch, or machinery such as a dozer. This production has introduced you to some of the common tools that are used in Western Queensland today. Whatever situation you find yourself responding to, utilise the most effective available tool to deal with the situation at hand. With any equipment that you plan to use on a fire ground, it is imperative that you have inspected it, tested it, and ensured it is operating properly prior to responding. Your level of expertise and competence in working with any of this equipment will maximise your safety and minimise the time and effort needed to manage grass fires. If you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it.